You get down at the end of the pavement, everybody goes home. We don't have to stay around 3 hours and wait for the bleed water to bleed and get out there and final finish it. It's fast tracking. It's this type. Guys aren't used to that. These finishers are used to being around there till 8 o'clock at night finishing concrete that they should have been off of at 3. But that's what they do. It's a hard lesson for them to break. You guys can be the change demons. Make things change. I use this photograph because when you ask for a test pour, this is what normally happens. The ready mix gets a great slab in his yard, but this is a test slab for a bridge deck. And a couple things here. These aren't the finishers. These are the superintendents that are going to be there. So these aren't the guys that are actually going to finish the concrete anyhow. Secondly, this isn't the equipment. They're not going to place the concrete on a bridge with a 2x4. They're going to use a big Bidwell Pavers, sophisticated equipment, all this stuff. They're not going to use a broom to texture it. They're going to have it tied onto the Bidwell. And they're not going to hand finish it. So the only thing this is really accomplishing is they're seeing that there's no bleed water. You see there's no sheen on this concrete. There's no water on the surface of this concrete. So they're placing it, finishing it, texturing it, curing it, go home. 10 minutes, if you do it right. On a parking deck, this happens to be in Milwaukee Airport. This is slab on grade. They used the slab on grade as a test pour. Before they got up on the decks, they figured if they're going to make a mistake, we'll do it on grade where we can yank it back out. But you still, they used the bridge screed here. They used the paving screed here where that was used to be over here. They're bringing it over here now. Right behind the screed, they're hitting it with a float to close the surface. The float actually has a broom off the front of it, which I think I have another video of, or a picture of. And then spraying it with curing compound. This white pigmented curing compound is just that. It forms, it's a liquid that when it dries on the surface of the concrete, it forms a film that you can actually kind of pick off as a sheet. It almost forms like a rubbery film on the surface of concrete to keep the moisture in the concrete from evaporating. This is another shot of a finishing of a parking deck. Indianapolis Airport is building a 6,000 car parking deck starting next month. Silica fume concrete is in the specification. All these videos and user manuals and everything the local contractors are all going through right at this time to learn this technique, where they place it, close the surface, texture it, cure it. They're pouring it off in strips. You can see how they're going. You can see the individual strips going across the deck. Once they get down to the end of the deck, they're done. It's being finished and cured right here. They never have to get back onto this. Even though you can't walk on this concrete, it's still considered fresh. Where old way of finishing, you'd still get on this concrete and work it later on. This stuff is still fresh, but it's done. It's finished. There's nothing less to do with it. This is the, here's the broom. They actually invented a tool when we first started because of the non-bleeding concrete here. You can see there's no shine on this concrete. They use a tool which is called a Fresno. It's a steel trowel. A lot of guys that work with concrete, they use a lot of wooden tools, wooden floats, bull floats, wooden floats. Really good for consolidating aggregate and that type of things with conventional concrete. But because this stuff is real tacky, wood float will just kind of pull and tug at the surface. Instead of closing the surface, it'll actually rip the surface back open again. This concrete without the bleed water is very sticky. It's cohesive and adhesive. It'll stick to everything and it'll stick to itself. So if you start pulling it, it'll have a tendency to want to rip apart. So they have to close the surface, and they do that with this steel trowel, which works very well, and then they have to put a texture on it. Well, you know, if I'm going to try and reach out there with a broom and put a broom texture on, it's crazy because you can't balance it 30 feet out without it smacking into the concrete. The guy says, I'll just attach, and the contractor actually made this. He just attached the broom off the front of his Fresno. So when he actually pushes this tool out across the concrete, this edge of the blade is in contact. Everything is tilted this way. This actually rides in the air. As he's pushing the bull float out across the deck, the broom rides in the air. When it gets to its furthest point, he turns what's called a hustler joint right here, which changes the angle of the blade from this angle to this angle, thereby lowering the broom onto the deck, and he pulls it back towards him. He not only closes the surface, but he puts a texture on at the same time. 2 steps in one. The next guy sprays it with curing compound, they go home. Without the curing compound or without curing immediately, this will crack. It's like, give me a piece of paper and let me guarantee you that it will crack now so that I don't get the phone call. If you don't cure it, it's going to crack because there's no bleed water here. I mean, it's physics, you know, it's going to crack if you don't do the right steps. Some of the things that they found in the part of what's doing the right steps is if you can, particularly on bridges, they're placing them more at night. Less traffic at night. It's safer at night without traffic on the highways. But it's also a lower temperature at night. And we talked about this temperature differential. If you think about placing concrete in the morning, if you place concrete at 8 o'clock in the morning, it's probably going to sit around for 16 hours before it really starts gaining temperature. So at about 24 hours, 22 hours or so, it'll be really peaking at temperature. Well, 20 hours from 8 o'clock in the morning is 4 in the morning. So your concrete's going to be getting its hottest when it's the coldest outside. It doesn't make sense. You've got the concrete gaining temperature at the same time that your environment out here is losing temperature. If you place concrete at night, 6, 7, 8 o'clock at night, what happens is it starts getting hot 3 o'clock in the afternoon, 4 o'clock in the afternoon, 5 o'clock in the afternoon. Well, that's fine. That's the hot part of the day. So everything climbs together. It's not the fact that the concrete gets hot. It's this coefficient. It's this difference in temperatures between the outside temperature and the concrete temperature that'll cause cracking. So they place a lot of bridges at nighttime. Lower temperatures at night, reduced temperature differentials. They have a tendency to place it as the lowest slump possible. If you place, slump is that on the video where they pulled that cone up and the concrete all fell and they measure how much slump that is. When you have a very high slump concrete and you're pouring it over steel, what happens is sometimes is that concrete, because it has so much flow, will have a tendency to start to settle over the reinforcing bars. And the reinforcing bars will act as stress risers and actually cause the concrete to crack as it settles around the reinforcing steel. So if you take some of that slump out of the concrete and it can support itself out, lower slumps are better for reduced cracking. This stuff, you can't over vibrate it. It won't segregate. And as we said before, early finishing was better than excessive hand finishing. All the curing practices that have been found to date is they immediately cure it with water, at least for 7 days, wet burlap, those type structures. When you're doing multiple bridges, multiple long span bridges, normally what happens is if you have a single span bridge, you have one column here, one column here, we're going to cross the interstate, we're going to go in one continuous span. They'll start pavement on this side and just go in one complete motion all the way until they're on the other side of the deck. If you're doing viaducts, or like up on 294 in Chicago, where you have these long continuous spans, maybe a mile long, over, not even over a river, over somebody's backyard, just elevated, it's a bridge. But what happens is you can't place those from one end to the other end straight through. Because as you're placing the concrete on the bridge, while the concrete is still fresh, it has a lot of weight. It's liquid almost, so it has a lot of weight on the surface, and you're deflecting that. It doesn't have any strength-bearing characteristics because it hasn't gotten hard yet, so it can't support itself, so it adds a lot of weight to the structure. So what happens is when you build multiple span bridges is you have to place all the positive moment regions first. You have to place all those regions over top of the columns first, and then you come back the next day and you do the negative moment regions, because of that weight loading. If you were to do the one continuous pour straight through, this extra weight on this 3rd or 4th segment would be cracking this concrete all the way back here just because of the extra weight tilting the bridge. And this concrete back here is not hard enough to support its own weight yet. So there's a little bit different construction practice when you're doing excessively long bridges on placements. If they have the technique worked out well, this is what it looks like in a snapshot. The Bidwell Pavers up here with the epoxy coated bar. They're putting a texture on this concrete here. They're placing it in the evening. You can see by the sunlight hours. And the wet burlap is probably 10 minutes maybe behind. No bleed water. I actually don't like this concrete. The guys that they're using an AstroTurf drag, a piece of AstroTurf wrapped around a bull float. And this guy on the catwalk here just drug it across this whole deck. You can see there's some rattiness that's been rolled up on the surface. They actually had polypropylene fibers in this concrete to try and help with plastic shrinkage cracking. I said there's 1,001 things you can do to control plastic shrinkage cracking. They really didn't need the plastic fibers if they're going to cure it this quickly, but they still had it in there. But what happens is that all those little fibers from the AstroTurf grab onto the mortar, and the mortar is real sticky, so it sticks to the fibers and it sticks to itself. So the more you use it, the more mortar it pulls off the concrete, and the real rattier the surface becomes. But the district engineer in this particular case, they like it this rough. You drive your car across it and you can definitely tell there's a different texture on the bridge that has got a whole different zing to it. This is some of what they do also. I see engineers that go into great detail. Oh, plastic shrinkage cracks. We got to stop plastic shrinkage cracking. I have to fog the concrete. I have to create this humidity. So they go to great extents of putting in elaborate fogging machines and spending money. It's wasted. It's wasted. First place, you're not supposed to spray the water down directly onto the surface of the concrete. It's supposed to be raising the humidity of the air above the concrete. You might as well just get a garden hose and spray it on the concrete. Secondly is, if they were prepared to put the curing on, they don't have to texture this. They're going to come back and saw cut it later. If the contractor was prepared to put the wet burlap on this close to the paver, what good's this doing? He already has it under cure. This is useless. He just spent all that extra money to do nothing. I mean, if he did the right thing first, which is what he's doing, he doesn't need the fogging machine. Plus, he's placing it in the morning. But he's got the cure on right away, so that's good. People spend so much money on fogging, and it just doesn't, I mean, if you can place it and finish it, and here again you see it, the Bidwell's placing it, this guy's texturing it, here's the wet burlap under there, it's 10, 15 minutes behind. There's not a fire drill going on here. The guys aren't overworking. There's this is an easier job all around. I don't like tools that stick to the surface. We said that wooden tools will stick and tug at the surface of silica fume concrete. Steel tools work best. This is what a texture looked like. People say, well, if I put a texture on, in this case you can see the AstroTurf, the green up here. If I put a texture on here, when I lay this burlap on, isn't it going to smash down all the texture? And no, not really. I mean, the guys that say that have never been out on a bridge deck, because normally what happens is, he's got one end of the burlap and I have the other end here. We pick it up, we lay it down on the deck. We don't drag it across the deck. We're not dragging it across. We're laying it down across the deck. So it's just the weight resting on the concrete. Here's tined concrete that had wet burlap applied, as was in the other picture, literally minutes behind. The wet burlap doesn't smash the tines out. Yes? Good. I think we're close to the end anyhow.
Question to Tony. You see how rich the presentation is and complete. Some of you think that I like concrete. You see why. Any questions for Tony?
Oh, thanks. If you need to reach me when you're out there working your jobs on anything that has to do with concrete, it's my name, Tony at silicafume.org. Real easy. Silica Fume's all one word. The other class took all my business cards, so I'm sorry. It's just my name, Tony at silicafume.org, O-R-G. Thanks, guys. Have a great week.